Welcome back to another episode of the God Factor podcast. It's your girl, your host, Abiola and how's everybody doing today? I hope you're having a great time in the world. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's tuned into our first episode on season 2 since we've been back. Appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the support. Thank you kindly. So to kind of continue off of where we stopped in the first episode, I did say that I was going to be sharing some things that I had learned in my 20s. Usually I'm technically like the whole decade, me being 20. Obviously there's a lot of things that I have learned. However, I just picked out like the significant stuff. So I have 10 things that I have written down here. So I think I'm going to be doing 5 in this episode, and then I'm going to be doing another 5 next episode. So without further ado, let's go. So the number one thing that I learned, or the number one thing that I wrote down, was the power of relationships. And this may sound very, oh, what is she talking about? But I honestly, like, relationships, I learned the importance of relationships in our lives. And it's very easy for you to, well, for me, let me speak for myself. At some point in my life, it was very easy for me to want to do away with certain relationships. Just, again, out of, not because, I just wanted to, I just felt like I could do all bad by myself. It was just more out of like frustration or whatever it is that I was going through at that point in time. And I just felt like I didn't need certain relationships in my life. I felt like I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. But I learned the importance of relationships, and most especially family relationships. Now, I'm not saying that it is okay for you to be treated in a toxic way. I'm not saying that it's okay for you to be treated in an abusive way or anything like that. When it gets to that point where your values and it's turning into abuse, then you really have to make a choice as to if you want to leave the situation completely, and then hopefully the other person realizes that they have to do some work within themselves. What I'm saying is just the ties that we have. I'm of the huge belief that every family is very dysfunctional. Every relationship is dysfunctional, because if everybody in a relationship was perfect, then there will be no reason for anybody to argue or to fight or to want to be better or whatever the case is. So every family, every relationship has some dysfunction to it. And one of the things that I have noticed, or one of the things that I have learned with relationships, especially family relationships, is that the reason why you have those people in your life, like, you were not born into that family you were not just born into that family. Like, that family was chosen for you because you have something to contribute, you have something to teach, and you also have something to learn from the people in that family. You are a teacher, and you're also a learner, like, you're also a student. The moment you feel like, I've arrived, I don't need these people are, I'm too good for these people, I don't want to have anything to do with these people, that's the moment where you really, 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 really need to start asking and questioning yourself, that is this really the truth? Like, what, like, is my ego playing in here, or am I actually really saying something that's true to myself? I don't know if I'm making sense, but I realized that for myself. I realized that it wasn't healthy for me to just think like, I don't need these people. It wasn't healthy for me to just think like, oh, my family members are, I don't want to be in a relationship with these people anymore. I don't want to have a relationship with these people anymore. I just want to do all bad by myself. It was very, very unhealthy for me to think that way, because me thinking that way meant that I had arrived. It meant that I didn't have any growth or anything to do. And our purpose here in life is to want to be like God, is to have a closer relationship with God. So there's some things that you're not going to be able to fix in your family that's going to frustrate you, but you're not going to be able to fix in your family, and you're going to have to take it to God. So people will test you. Your relationships will test you. And the purpose of the relationship is to bring out certain parts of you, good and bad, that even you did not know was there. So the moment you feel like, oh, I've arrived, I'm not learning anymore, there's no growth for me, that is the day that you need to start checking yourself and asking yourself questions. Is this really the truth? Or am I dealing with actual factual statements saying that, that I've arrived? Or is this a situation where I'm walking away because, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's abuse? Or is it really that I just feel like I don't want to have anything to do with these people anymore? I'm too good for them, I'm too big for them. You just have to ask yourself that question. So that's one of the things that I learned in my 20s. Number two, the second thing that I learned is I learned that just because you're growing older, it doesn't necessarily mean you're wiser. And if you don't challenge yourself mentally, you're gonna find yourself like you're gonna be 40 with the mindset of a 5-year-old. And this for me was just profound, and it was just something that, it was a download that came through for me. The reason why is because, let me not even say the reason why, but I just find myself sometimes, like, in this body of a 31-year-old, I find myself still acting like a child sometimes. And I question why. I cringe, I cry, I do certain things that like, it's like, I'm like, why? Like, why am I acting like a child? And one of the things that, in that moment, one of the things that became very glaring to me, which I knew before now, however, in that moment, it became very, very, like, it was almost like, let me just call it a revelation. It was a revelation, something that sat, like, it was deep for me. It was that if I don't give myself the ability, if I don't challenge myself mentally, I'm going to find myself in that body of a 5-year-old, in that mindset of a 5-year-old, still thinking that, I will be in the body of a 31-year-old, but I'll still have that mindset of a 5-year-old. Like, for instance, one of the things that I use an example for all the time is money mentality. Like, if you grew up with the assumption that, money is hard to come by, money, you have to work extremely hard for you to be able to get money, you have to work multiple jobs, you can never be a millionaire or billionaire, you can never have your own business, you can never have financial freedom. If that was the mentality that you grew up, obviously that is going to, like, that's what is going to shape the decisions that you make surrounding money as you continue to grow older. And if you get to a point in time where you find that that is not working for you anymore, and you don't make a conscious effort to actually challenge those thoughts, guess what? You're going to find yourself making decisions surrounding that mentality, and you're really not going to do anything about it. Like, nothing is going to change until you actually stop and ask yourself, okay, is this really true, or is this just what I have been told? Okay, if it's not my truth, or if it's not the truth, if it's not things that I have seen, how can I change this for myself and begin to develop a different mentality about money? So for me, that was something that became profound, and I was like, if you really don't put yourself in a situation or a different place mentally concerning certain things about your life and yourself, you're going to find yourself continuously thinking like that person, that 5-year-old, with that mindset of the 5-year-old. You're going to find yourself thinking based off of the way you were brought up, your environment, and everything that shaped you. So that was another thing that became really profound for me in my 20s, that I'm going to be taking with me into my 30s. That's going to be useful for me, and I hope useful for you as well. The third thing that I'm going to be talking about is, I learned what it is to have an actual relationship with God. And I'm not talking a relationship where I kiss and go. I'm not talking I don't even know what to call it. Yeah, it's not one where I kiss and go. It's not one where I come, I appear for 5 days and then I disappear for 6 months or 1 year. It's not one where I come and I'm like, oh God, please give me this. Once he gives me, I'm off. It's one where I'm like, this is where I want to be. I want to be with you. I want to know you. I want to understand you. I want you to be a part of my life. I learned what it meant to have that relationship with God. And let me tell you, I'm not going to sit down here and say it's the easiest thing to do. However, when you've had the run around, when you've had to worship other things in place of God, and when I mean other things, depending on what it is, it could be people, it could be friendships, it could be relationships, it could be money, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be women, it could be men, whatever it is, when you've had to worship other things or situations in place of God, and obviously it's not working for you, then at that point in time, you begin to have an understanding of what it means to have a relationship with God. You begin to seek that inner peace, that inner joy. And I believe in my journey, this is my own personal belief, I believe that only comes from having that genuine relationship with God. And I learned that, and for me it started later into my 20s. It started probably when I turned, I think I would say when I turned 27. I turned 27 in 2017. No, just before I turned 27 in 2016. So towards the end of 2016, that's when it started. So just before I turned 27. So I was still 26 at the time. Or maybe I was 27 already. I don't even know. Like, my math is off right now. But yeah, it started later into my 20s. And I have just been building and building and building and building, and it's been a journey, but that's one of the things that I've had to learn in my journey. The fourth thing that I learned was I learned to challenge myself by pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Just because I was born in a particular situation doesn't mean I have to die in that situation. And this kind of ties in with my second point that I made about challenging myself mentally and just not thinking that, oh, because I'm growing older, it means I'm growing wiser and it's a pass for me to be able to learn, or for me to be able to do things differently. I learned that I don't have to be stuck in the same environment or mindset that I was born into. And for me, even like leaving Nigeria and coming into a different country, being around different people, I don't want to say it was not necessarily forced, but it encouraged me to step outside of that comfort zone, because everything that I knew growing up until a certain age did not necessarily work when I got here. The people around me, like, I get to hang around different people every day. I get to meet different people from all walks of life with different stories, different backgrounds, different ways of doing things. I get to learn things from people every day. So for me, it was like I had to challenge myself. I had to grow. And so having relationships, being a mother, oh my goodness, like, let me even just talk about being a mother. It's one of those things where I can't necessarily raise my son the exact way that I was raised, because one, my son is growing in a different country that I grew up in. He's hanging around different people that I hung around with, I hung around with when I was growing up. So obviously dynamics are different, everything is different. So in order for me to be this woman, who God has called me to be, I have to be able to make that conscious effort to push myself outside of my comfort zone, to learn new things, to do things differently, to just be able to open up myself and receive the blessings and the grace and the awesomeness that the abundance that the world has to offer. So that's another thing that I learned. And the last thing that I learned, which is the fifth thing, this is where I'm going to be stopping for this particular video, is I learned to speak I learned to speak the truth as it is. Not trying to sugarcoat stuff because I want to save the other person's emotions, but just say it for what it is, knowing that it is for the best. I don't even know where, I do know where I got that. I think it's just emotions. You know, I have this thing where I always want to save people's face, and I don't want to tell them the truth. I don't want to tell them as it is. So or I don't want to hurt their feelings. So because of that, I feel the need to sugarcoat stuff. When I need to tell them stuff, I feel the need to sugarcoat stuff, make it sound, nice, and to the point where sometimes I don't even get to the actual point. I had to learn that it wasn't helping anybody, because I eventually, what would happen is that I'll find myself in situations where I will be told to my face things that I did, which is the truth, things that I did not do well, which is the truth. And then I will be so upset, and I'll feel attacked, and I'll be like, why are you telling me this, and why are you saying this, and stuff like that. I don't say the same to you, but hey, guess what? It wasn't my place not to say to them. Sorry, it's not my, my duty is to be able to communicate with them and let them know that, okay, this is what you've done, and this is how I think you can do better, or this is where you've there's a hiccup, and this is what I think we could do better. But if I don't communicate that to that person, then it doesn't stop them from communicating whatever shortcomings that I have. And also, I'm not even helping them by trying to sugarcoat stuff or trying to make things look pretty on the outside, when technically, or when realistically, inside is a whole hot mess. Like, I always like to use a cake. I use definition of a cake. I always say a cake is so pretty on the outside, like the icing, the fondant, whatever kind of icing you use, the decor, the accessories, and all that good stuff. But you never know what's in the cake. It could be mud, it could be actual flour and cake and flavoring and sugar and all that stuff. It could be anything inside the cake. It could be sand, it could be filled with just crap. You never know. So my headspace for a period of time was to bake that cake and make it look pretty on the outside, but guess what? Inside of the cake is messy. It's a hot ass mess. So what I learned that I had to use to my advantage, what I learned in my 20s going into my 30s now, is regardless of how hard the message is going to be, regardless of how hard it is for me to be able to communicate to the other person exactly what's going on, it is my duty to communicate that information to that person. However they choose to take it, it's okay. They don't have to be okay with it at that point in time. It's okay to be uncomfortable about the situation at that point in time, but it's my duty ultimately to be able to relay that message to them, because at the end of the day, that is the role that I play in their life. It cannot just be hee hee ha ha ho ho all the time, right? There's gonna be times where things are not the greatest, and it's okay. But hey, guess what? We have a relationship, and my goal or my duty or what I'm accountable for in that relationship is to help them be better. So if I'm not able to tell them, oh, this is what you do well, and this is what you don't do well, and this is what I think you can improve on, then what's the point of that relationship? Why do we even have a relationship in the first place? And also, I find that it helps me receive such things better. So I don't feel like, oh, I'm telling you all these good things, I never tell you all these bad things, but it's so easy for you to tell me these bad things about myself or these shortcomings about myself. It makes me receive, it helps me receive, because I want to give you, and I also want you to give me, because I want us to grow, I want us to be better, I want us to be better human beings in general. So that's another thing that I learned. So like I said, I'm gonna put a stop here. I don't want this recording to be too long, so I'm gonna put a stop here, and I'm gonna continue in another video where I'm gonna be sharing last 5 things, which, I mean, it's not in chronological order. It's not like I learned this first and then this second. It was just stuff that came to me as I was writing. So let me know what you think. Have you learned any of these things, or how does it sound out to you? How does it call to you? What do you think? Leave a comment down below, subscribe. Also, if you're not a video person, you can always listen to this on the podcast. I put the link of everything where you can find the podcast on Apple and Spotify below as well. Share with your friends, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening in on the podcast, and I'll see you next time. Also, our Instagram is at the God Factor Podcast, and I also have a page called Steady Steps, which is basically the umbrella of everything. Yeah, Steady Steps is like the mother, and then the God Factor is a subsection of Steady Steps, is the daughter or the son of Steady Steps. So yeah, so you can either follow us on at Steady Steps on Instagram, or at the God Factor podcast, or on both platforms. It doesn't really matter. It's all good. The more the merrier. And you can always send us a direct message. And really and truly, my goal is to be able to help us develop a better and closer relationship with God, which is the ultimate in my experience and my opinion. And if there's anything that has called out to you, if there's anything that you resonate with, and you'd like to share, you can always send us a message, and I'll be more than happy to talk and have a conversation and see what it is that we could do to get you started on your journey. So thank you very much for listening. Appreciate you. Thank you, and have an amazing rest of your day.